Now, here we are again, folks. This is Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. September the 9th. I don't believe it is. Is it really? No, today's the 17th. This is 9 and 17. 9 and 17 of, the year 17. Sometimes in our lives, I turned a year over this year, and I'm now 76. If we're not careful, we'll allow some things that we owned throughout our younger life. We kind of own them just as an everyday, not worrying, not thinking thought. But now we have to think about things a lot more because we've aged a little and things drift from us. And so we have to be careful that we maintain. I maintain a muscle. I'm 76. I maintain a muscle. And why do I maintain that? Because I know if I don't, I get physically unable. Now, we've got to maintain a spiritual muscle. We've got to get in the book every day. We've got to do our praying every day. My fault today, right now, sitting before you, is, I would say, prayerless. You say, well, you pray, Brother Peter. Yeah, I pray. But how do I pray? Do I pray with meaning? Do I pray like Jesus prayed? Do I believe like Jesus was and what he was and who he was? I think we fail in that. Let's go to the book of John. While I'm talking a minute, if you'll turn to the book of John, chapter 11, and verse 41. We're going to see people talking with Jesus and saying, my brother Lazarus, if you'd have been here earlier, he'd have lived. But he's dead now, and he's in the grave. And he's already been in the grave 3 days while you tarried coming. And we know you could have made him not die. But Jesus knew all of the time exactly what was happening. And because of that, he did tarry. He did dolly along. He did take his time. He was a very compassionate God. And he wanted to meet the need of Lazarus' sister. It said, then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. Jesus hadn't said the words from his mouth yet, but he had said the words from his heart. And the words he said even back when he was just inaugurated as who he was, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, walking on the earth. His prayer was that the Father would always hear and answer anything he asked or said or thought. So I heard my sister talking to my wife the other day, and she was saying that you know what you think, Ernestine. I know you may not can say it, you can't talk, but what you think in your heart, God knows. And my wife's got a stage of cancer in the brain, and she can't say what she wants to say. She can't say what she's thinking. And so God has to intervene. And my sister's telling her, God will intervene for you. Proclaim this thanksgiving for that which we have already been prayed and heard. Wow. He's thanking God for what he's already got in his mind, in his heart, and he's thanking his Father that his Father already is in tune. They're both in tune. They've got the same heart. And Jesus is the heart of God on the earth, and God is the heart of God in heaven. And so this is how that's working. And Jesus is saying this. And I know that you hear me always, he said. Wow. And he said, I know you hear me always. This speaks of the relationship. This is beyond mouth speaking. This is the heart relationship. The relationship you and I have with God in the heart. By heart, we have a relationship with God. But because of the people which stood by, I said it. that they may believe that you have sent me. Wow. Here's a man, a human being, God in the flesh, standing there, and he's saying that it's important. I was trying to get rid of my shadow, and I can't get rid of it on this side, and so I'm going to have to do something different. So he prayed this so that the people would understand. And when he thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. He cried for Lazarus to come forth. There we go. We got some of the shadow out of here now. Lazarus, come forth. And do you know what? He did. Okay. Let me get where I am. I've been so concerned about my thing here. And when he thus had spoken, cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. This constitutes a command, and from the Creator of ages. This is Jesus, the one that was with God when the earth was spoken into existence, and God said, let us make man in our own image. This is the one he was talking to, his son. Considering that he is the resurrection, and he is the life. Had he not called the name Lazarus by name, all the dead saints that were in the grave, not just there, but all over the world would have came forth. But he called his name. And he who was dead came forth. In verse 44 it says, he who was dead came forth. This constitutes the greatest miracle in human history. This was one of the greatest miracles in human history. Now, God had dealings with those who had gone on before that were dead, and they were great miracles. And but they were in the Old Testament days. The Bible forbid that to be done. And so, but here he is, and look for 44. And he who was dead came forth, bound hand and foot in his grave clothes. His legs were no doubt, listen there, his legs were no doubt bound separately, with he's able to walk, but with some difficulty. And his face was bound about with a napkin. Now, in studying how they used to kind of embalm a person, like the Egyptians did in a matter of sense, was how they wrapped their legs all up and they wrapped their body all up and then they put them in there. Now, I believe that if we want to put human aspect in there and say that he walked out of the grave, it said he came forth bound. So he just floated out of there, if you please. Some people would think, well, his legs were stiff and everything, and he just walked out of there like a dead mummy. No, Jesus brought him forth. He came forth, no doubt, with his legs taped together. And his face was bound about with a napkin. This concerns a cloth which had been laid over his face, but which he had properly partly removed. Now Jesus said unto them, loose him and let him go. This refers to this is an obvious to this burial being taken off the body, taken off everything that was part of the world that's wrapped around him, that is visible to human man, that has got him bound, taken off from him, taken off from his body. Now Lazarus had been called up from paradise. He had to come back into that body. Lazarus' soul had already gone to paradise. Don't you know? This was probably one unhappy man that he was called back to this earth after spending 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth and in the bosom of Abraham, in paradise. And that's where that was, in the heart of the earth. From the opposite side of hell, there was a great gulf fixed between hell and paradise, so that neither could cross from either way. Wow. He had been for the past 4 days. One can only surmise as what happened when the voice of Jesus rang out in that place concerning Lazarus. Then they of the Jews which came to Mary and had seen the things which Jesus did believed on him. Jesus would later say to them, "Blessed are they who have not seen and yet have believed," in John 20 and 29. And so we've got to remember that we live by faith, not by sight. It said, but some of them were there, their ways to the Pharisees, and told them the things Jesus had done. How it is that an individual could observe a miracle and witness it and still oppose the miracle worker. Wow. That is something. Do you know the greatest miracle for me, Brother Peter, that ever happened was when God resurrected me at 3 o'clock in the morning, November 5th, 1972, a full-fledged, sold-out alcoholic. And God raised me from that and said, nevermore do you ever get near that again. You are free, absolutely 100% free from that. You do not have to be in that anymore. You are resurrected. I'm going to give you some new clothes. I'm going to put you past that, all of that, and it's done. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees in council and said, what do we? What are we going to do? Hey, this presents both Pharisees and Sadducees joining the denunciation of Jesus. They both were going to denounce him. They both were going to say, it's not true, this is not. Even though they were normally bitter enemies between themselves. Hey, Pharisees and Sadducees did not get together. One believed in the resurrection, one didn't believe in the resurrection. It said, for this man does many miracles. Presents not all of them denying the miracles, but some actually admitted to their validity, that they actually did happen, that they really were. I mean, they saw it with their eyes, and yet they wanted to deny it. How could it be any different? If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and the nation. In fact, the Romans did. Matter of fact, if we're not mistaken, the Romans did exactly that in the rejection of Christ and brought it all about. They were spiritually blind. There were some Romans, like Paul the Apostle, that came in later. And one of them, named Caiaphas, being a high priest, that same year, this is part of the political spectrum of people, as Caiaphas, in a high office, said unto them, you know nothing at all. You know nothing at all. This could be translated, you do not understand the dangers we face. In that day, this was happening. What were the dangers? The dangers were a political fight between the customs of the Jews and the Romans. And it was going to be. Verse 50, it said, "Now consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not." Mr. Williams said this, that the death of Jesus proposed and commanded by the high priest was revolved upon in fearful moments, for the rising of Lazarus had brought their malignity to a head. See, there's been a question among the Romans, among all of the people living in this area in this period of time, was this resurrection from the dead. Jesus had proclaimed all the way through, and in Genesis it was written that Jesus would die on the cross, would rise again on the third day. Isaiah spoke much about it. Every book in the Old Testament brings Jesus forward. He's the only man on earth that had a pure lineage all the way back, not missing one person. For 45 generations there was not a person missed, not one. And by the way, that 45 generations up till now is quite a study. Let's not get into that right now. Verse 51, "And this spoke he not of himself." Actually, it means that they were condemning Jesus to death, even though evil and wicked, for which they would pay dearly, would be used of God for the redemption of mankind. Now, this is the Redeemer, Jesus Christ, the Redeemer. And he's being cursed and everything else for doing this deed. But the high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for the nation. And once again, now this fell out to that which was ordained by God, but which is no way to absolve this of the blame that was being put on him. And so we've got to see the church here. Jesus Christ is coming after the body of believers to make them his church. Also, he should gather together in one body, constituting of both Jesus and Gentiles. Hey, there's a lot going on in this scripture. There's a lot going on here in John chapter 11. And there's more going on than meets the eye. The Apostle Paul would be given the meaning of the new covenant, which was the meaning of the cross that would establish the church. Now, we see in John here some talking before Paul, in the sense of the word, even though this was written after Paul and all that, but it was taking place before Paul. So we've got to get this all in our mind right. Now, then from the day forth they took counsel together for to put him to death. This is men rejecting Christ, and we put him to death every day. We Christians, we people, his children, daily drive stakes into him by not observing, not praying, not believing, not doing what we should do, by failing. Why Jesus prayed so hard in the garden that he had great drops of blood. His vocabulary's busted. And we won't even break a sweat. I'm probably one of the biggest failures in the prayer life there is. When I do pray, I pray small, and I pray, Lord willing, to believe 100% what I'm asking would be answered. But I really do not agonize like I could for those around me. I have children that need agonizing for. They're in a different world. I was in the alcohol world. They're in the dope world. Well, the dope world's a dangerous world today. It carries you further than you want to go and keeps you longer than you want to stay. Costs you more than you want to pay. And there's nothing you can do about it once you get in it. Now I got to get on because we got to get out of here. Our time is almost come and gone. Hey, Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews. The raising of Lazarus from the death was the greatest miracle that brought all of this to climax. But Jesus went thence unto the country near to the wilderness, unto the city called Ephraim, and there continued with his disciples. This seems to represent the connection with Bethel, 2 Chronicles 13:19, which is the house of bread. It was probably about 15 miles north of Jerusalem that day. You've got to remember, in the Old Testament days now, the landmarks that were put there permanent. And Bethel was the house of bread. It was put there permanent. It was a spot on the earth where people could go, and God had his eye on that spot. Kind of like he had a telescope set up on that one spot on the earth. And when people entered that spot, they were recognized there. And the Jews' Passover was nigh at hand. It was, he was the true Passover, and Jesus was, and would fulfill the type by dying on Calvary. And many went out of the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. Now you remember, this is one of the things that Mary and Joseph had to do when they were there. They were not just there just to be there when Jesus was born. This is pertaining to going through the Levitical ceremonial cleansing, from washing the dead of the unclean things. In Numbers 9, 6 through 10, we see the beginning of this taking place. Then sought they for Jesus. These again, here those Pharisees and those scribes and everything, they're searching for Jesus, and see the present authorities seeking him in order that they may be, they want to arrest him for raising a man from the dead. They wanted to arrest him, and spoke among themselves as they stood in the temple, What think ye, that he will not come to the feast? Why, they knew he would. In almost every place, hundreds, if not thousands of people seeking to hear him or be healed by him surrounded him. So their task of arresting him would not be easy. Wow. They knew they were going to have a crowd to come against. There was a group there that said, hey, you ain't coming here. You guys are not coming in here. You just stay out. We're going to push together and keep you out of here. Now both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given commandment that if any man knew where he were, he should show it, that they might take him. They had determined that they must stop. He must be stopped at all costs. The truth is that it cost them everything, both life and soul. Just think of that. Rejection of Jesus Christ will cost you your life and your soul forever, for eternity. You see, your soul's going to live forever. This body's only going to live perhaps 100 years. But you got a soul that's going to live forever. People are piling up money in bank accounts today for their body, not taking thought that whatever you do for the soul is a permanent bank account. I'm working on my permanent bank account. My physical net worth is zero. Zero. You punch me in today to the computer and say, could this man borrow $500 today? And you go to institution after institution after institution, they say, no, he can't. No, he can't. We won't loan him $500. Why? He doesn't have any credit record. He's not lived on credit. He's lived on his daily life. He's not lived on credit. So he doesn't have any credit rating. And if he doesn't have any credit rating according to the world, then he can't borrow a dime. We won't loan him a nickel. He's worthless. That's what my net worth physically is. I'm worthless. And as far as the world was concerned, when Jesus was walking across the earth, he was worthless. He had no place to lay his head. He had no house. He couldn't have gone down to the Pharisaical loan company and said, loan me $500. And they'd say, well, what you going to put up for collateral? Well, Jesus said, I own this robe. Yeah, I own this robe. And that was in the physical body now. Because he owned the whole world. His father owned it, and he was heir to it. But all he could say physically, I've got this robe. You think they're going to loan him $500? They're going to loan him 500 pennies. They don't loan him anything. They're going to say, where you work, Jesus? He's going to say, I and the Father are one. And we work together for the souls of men on this earth. Well, they say, well, that's no earthly good. We can't calculate that. We can't put that in the bank. And he said, no, but you can put your soul in the bank forever. If you believe in me, you can put your soul in the bank forever. Everything on this earth is going to pass away. Every bank account, every locked box in every vault, every safe, everything, every single solitary personal thing you have put up is going to perish. Everything. Everything. I can't, there's no way I can explain that. If I put 1,000 years between the E and between the thing, the every and the thing, I'm telling you that there's nothing, nothing on this earth that's going to be worthy of heaven other than through Jesus Christ. That's it. Period. Everything, all this stuff right here that I got right here, is to me, it's worth something. To me, I can go open a book and study it and read it. And to me, it's worth something for long-term soul food. It's soul food. I'm eating soul food daily. Are you eating soul food daily? Food that's going to live forever? Going to be the kind of food that you can use in heaven? Going to be the kind of thing in your heart and your mind that when you get to heaven, it won't be cast out and left on the earth? I know many Christians who have put nothing away for their heavenly trip. Boy, when you leave here, all you're going to face is God. That's it. You're going to face God. And the only thing you're going to have with you, what is done for Christ. There's only one life. It'll soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. Only what you've done in Christ. Have you spoke to a soul today? Have you said and comforted somebody today? Have you prayed for a brother or sister, father or mother? Have you prayed for anybody? If you can't get out, if you can't walk, if you can't see, if you can only hear, from your inside, have you prayed for others today? Have you worked toward putting something away in the soul field? That great field before God of souls. And what those souls represent. Have you prayed for those today? I fail myself. I fail myself. I'm out here doing this on this YouTube right now at this time of day. What time is it? It's 3:20 in the morning. Why am I doing this? Because I failed to pray and I couldn't sleep. God woke me up and I prayed for an hour or so, and then I came up and got on this computer because I couldn't sleep. If you break connection with the Father in heaven, you ain't going to sleep. You want good sleep? you get right with God and follow God. Well, our time's about come and gone. It's Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. We'll see you next time. Ask God to help you.